Hi guys, this is David from Java Made Easy. Please subscribe to the channel and give us a like. Okay, we're going to be working on selection sort. Let's see, how can we explain this one? Selection sort. This one is actually better than bubble sort. It has less swaps than bubble sort. It still runs in O(n) squared, but it's better. It has the same number of comparisons, but the swaps, it's O(n), not O(n) squared. Okay, selection sort. Okay, selection sort works by getting the lowest value in the array and bringing that value all the way to index 0, all the way to the beginning. Okay, so it loops, it goes through the array, finds the lowest value and puts it all the way to the end, like that. Okay, now how does it do that? Okay, well, let's see, let's try to do it. Let's see, I'm going to create a method, public void, and we're going to call it selection sort. It's going to take as an argument a int array, and we're going to call it nums. Okay, so we're going to get the lowest number and put it all the way to the beginning of the array. So I'm gonna need the variable to hold the value. So I'm gonna call it min, as we always get the lowest value. And in the beginning, I'm gonna use index 0, because that's the place where it's gonna put the lowest value. So this one is gonna equal the value in index 0. I'm just assuming that's the lowest value. Of course it's not, but we haven't done the looping, so I'm just creating a variable to hold the value. And then I'm gonna create a looping here. I'm gonna call it in, as this is gonna be an inner loop, and this is gonna equal to 0. Sorry, it's going to equal to 1, and then in lesser than nums.length minus 1, and then we're going to increment in. There we go. Okay, now let's take a look at the loop in here. So first of all, we created a variable to hold the value in index 0, which is where selection sort is going to put the lowest value all the way to the left in the beginning of the array. So we're just assuming, that index 0 has the lowest value, and then we're going to be comparing the rest of the numbers starting from index 1 to the end. Starting from index 1 to the end, we're going to be checking all these numbers with index 0, with the variable that is holding that value. So we're going to be comparing all these values again with the holder right there, with the min variable. So we're just gonna do a comparison, and we're gonna go nums in. So if nums in is lesser than the value that is inside min, if that's the case, then we want to put the lowest value in the index 0. So, but right now we're just gonna put it in the holder. So if this value is lower than 8, then mean it's gonna equal that value, because we want to get the lowest value out of the array, and then we're just gonna print this information. That's the way that we can get the lowest value in the array. Okay, dot println, and we're just gonna print the value of mean. Okay, so I'm just gonna run this piece of code, and this is just like a test, you know, just to get the lowest value in the array, which should be in this array number 1. Oh, what am I doing? I just created the method, but I'm not calling it. We need to call it. If you don't call it, it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to create an object of type it's not bubble sort, it's selection sort. Selection sort, let's call it SS equals new selection sort. There we go. And then we need to call that method, and we're gonna send in, as we said, taking as an argument the array. So we're just gonna send that one, and we're gonna run the code. Now we should do something. There we go. So we got the lowest value in the array. So this is just a test, a simple test to see how we can get that value. Okay, so once again, we created a variable to hold the minimum value, which we were assuming a selection sort uses index 0 in the array, you know, the lowest index in the range of the array to keep the lowest value. So we just did it like that. Okay, so this one was index 0, and then we compare the numbers starting from index 1, which is all the way here, and we compare all these numbers to the holder variable to see which one was lower, and then we swap that value, we put that value in the holder variable, and we just print it out. Okay, that was just a test. I'm gonna get rid of this. Let's get rid of this thing. Okay, so let's see. Let me put this number 1. I'm gonna put it right here. So let's say that this is the array. Okay, now we know the selection sort uses index 0 to keep the lowest value. So it's going to be using some kind of variable holder, you know, to hold the lowest value, which in this case index 0, it's going to be number 2. And then, as we did in the code, we're going to start from index 1, and we're going to compare all these numbers with index 0 and see which one is lower. Once we find the lowest value, we're going to swap this value in here, and we're going to put it in index 1, and the value that was in index 0, we're going to put it with where the other number was. Okay, so it loops through the whole array, finds the lowest value and puts it in the index 0. Now this is just one for loop, so it's just going to get one value like the one that we printed out, but we need to sort the whole array, so we need to repeat the same process. So to do that, we can repeat the same process again using another loop. So an outer loop that is going to repeat this process for us. The piece of code that I made, that's going to be repeating inside of a for loop. And then once we have the lowest value on the left, then we're just going to be working in this range. So we're going to be working in this section of the array, and we're going to repeat the process. We are going to be taking a variable, a holder, and we're going to assume that this is index 0 now, just thinking, that's the lowest index in that range of the array. So we're going to be taking the this value, and we're going to be comparing that index with the rest of the values in the array, and we're going to be comparing these values, all of them with the variable holder, which it should be the lowest index. And once we found it, we're going to swap that number for that value, and you see how it's sorting in here. And then the outer loop is going to repeat the same process again. We're going to take the first index, and that's going to be the holder, the variable where we are going to be keeping the lowest value. Once again, we're going to assume right now that this is the lowest value, and then we're going to be comparing the rest of the array with this one in here. Okay, now this one, it is the lowest value, so it's going to stay there, and then it's going to repeat again. That's why we need an outer loop to repeat this process. So we're going to assume that the first index in that piece of range of the array holds the lowest value, and then we're going to be comparing the rest of the array to the holder. And once we find the lowest value, it's going to swap those two numbers in there. So that's where there is going to be sorting. Okay, so we said swapping. So the first thing we need is a method that is going to swap the value of the two numbers in the array. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me put some music. Actually, we don't have any music going. There we go. No, not yet. There we go. That's better. Okay, that's gonna be public void, and we're gonna call it swap, and this method is just going to swap two values. So it's gonna take two index values into one, into, and it's gonna be swapping values of an array. So okay, we're gonna need a temp variable tmp to hold nums1. So first of all, we keep the value of the first value 2 into a temp variable that's redundant, and then we'll put it in a temp variable because we're going to change the value of it. So nums1 is actually going to be nums2. So the value of nums2, it's going to go into nums1. So we took the value of nums1, we put it in a temp variable, then we changed the value of nums1 to be nums2, and then nums2, it's gonna have, I said 2, nums2, it's gonna have the value of nums1, which we have in the temp variable. So we have a method that swaps two values. There we go. Now we're going to be working on the selection sort method, and as I said, we're going to be needing a outer loop, and we're going to need an inner loop, and we're also going to need a variable that is going to be holding the lowest value. So we're going to call it min. Okay, now the outer loop. Okay, the outer loop, it's gonna equal 0, and then out lesser than nums.length minus 1, and then we're going to increment the value of out. Okay, so we got our outer loop, and as I said, the variable holder, it's going to hold the lowest value in the array, the lowest index. Okay, so in this case it's index 0. So mean, which is our variable that holds the value, is gonna equal out. Okay, so in the beginning, the holder mean, it's gonna be, hold on. Okay, so in the beginning, our holder variable, it's gonna equal out, which is index 0, and then it's gonna increment that by 1. So once we get the lowest value in index 0, it's gonna increment by 1, and then the holder variable, it's gonna equal index 1 here. It's going to be incrementing. Okay, and once we get the lowest value in the lowest index, which now it's 1, we're going to increment this outer loop again, and then our holder variable, which it's going to hold the minimum value, it's going to be index 2, and so on. So that's going to be incrementing. Okay, so that's why we have the holder variable in there to help us out to hold the lowest index value, and then we're going to be having the inner loop, and the inner loop in, it's going to equal, it's going to be out plus 1, and while in is lesser than nums.length, and we're going to increment the value of in. Okay, now the outer loop right here, we have the variable that is going to be holding the values, in the lowest index. We know it's going to be incrementing, so it's going to be moving. So once we have the lowest value in the holder variable, which is this one, we said that we're going to be comparing the rest of the items in the array with the holder variable. So this is out plus 1, because if we have the hold on, let me turn the volume down, maybe that's too loud. Okay, because once we have the value in here, we're just assuming number 8 is the lowest value. We're going to be comparing all these numbers starting with index 1. So starting with index 1, right now out equals 0, 0 plus 1 is 1, and we're going to be comparing index 1 right here with the value in the holder variable, which is 0. So this one is going to be compared to that one. Okay, now once we increment this loop in here, the value of in is going to increment, and then we're going to be comparing this value right here, number 2, with the value in the holder variable. Now this loop is going to run again, it's going to increment the value, and it's going to be comparing this one, with the value in the holder variable, which is in index 0. And once it finds the lowest value, it's going to swap those values. So once we find the lowest value, which if nums in is lesser than nums min, we said that is going to swap. Well, first of all, actually, we need to assign the minimum, the lowest value, to the variable holder. So min equals in. So we said that we're going to be comparing all these values with index 0. Once we find the lowest value, we're going to assign it to the holder in there. So once we have that going, then we're going to swap. So this loop, it's going to look for the lowest value in the array, just like we did in the beginning, with the temp variable. In this case, with the holder variable. So in this case, we just put the lowest value in the array in this variable, in the min variable. And once we put the lowest value in the array in that holder, then we're going to swap that value for the value that we have in index 0. So we're going to be swapping those two values in there. So out for min. Okay, and then actually how we need to print it. System dot out dot println and arrays dot to string. That's an easy way to print an array. We're going to print this one. Okay, so I'm going to run the code. And there we go, we have our sorted array. Okay, now just to recap, I'm gonna work this thing here. Okay, well, let's just work in this array. Okay, selection sort, it works by putting the lowest value in the array in index 0. So it's going to compare index 0 with values in the rest of the array, and once it finds the lowest value, it's going to swap it with index 0. It's always going to put the lowest value in index 0 in the beginning, the first index. Okay, now once we have the lowest value in there, the outer loop, we said that it's going to help us work on the proper range, and it's going to repeat itself. So we're going to take the first index, and we're going to be assuming that's the lowest value, and then it's going to work on the rest of the array, and it's going to compare all these values. That's the inner loop. All these values, it's going to compare them to the first index. And once it finds, here, once it finds the lowest value, it's going to put it in that index, and it's going to be swapping those values. Okay, so here he gets the lowest value, then he gets this range in here, and he puts the lowest value in there. It's going to be swapping them, and then it's going to work in this range. The outer loop is going to give us this range, and once again, index, the first index, we are going to be using it. We're going to be putting this value in the variable holder, and then the inner loop is going to compare all these values to the value that we have in the variable holder, and if it finds a lower value, it's going to put it in there. Oops, what did I do? I don't know. And that's what it does. So that's about it, guys. Go through the video if you need to twice. Let's make sure that you get this one really well, that you understand it. Please don't forget to join the channel. Give me a like. Thank you, guys. Bye.